What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. We are back. You know, this is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Well, as you all probably know, I sound like a broken record when I talk on here about, you know, when people get indicted, 97, 98% of those people do a plea bargain, go to prison, and they don't fight. They don't fight the system. Well, it's different today. I've got a guy that I'm interviewing, and Jeff Martinovich, he actually went through the whole thing, even to the point where he got all the way to trial, and there was deliberation, hung jury, and the judge said, "Nope, you're going back," and it ended up, Jeff ended up getting basically a 14-year sentence. And he fought, and I want to read a little bit about just his background, because I think his background's fascinating, because he's kind of done it all. But he earned his BS in business management from the United States Air Force Academy and his MBA in finance from the College of William and Mary. He had the honor of serving his country during the first Gulf War at Tactical Air Command Headquarters, Langley, Virginia. Pursuing a career in financial services, Jeff was the founder and CEO of MICG Investment Management, a billion-dollar wealth management firm nationally recognized for its rapid growth. Following the 2008 financial crisis, MICG hedge funds experienced some regulatory scrutiny and allegations. As CEO, Jeff vigorously defended his firm, refusing on 3 separate occasions. Each time, I'm breaking away here, because each time it was less time. I think it finally got down to like 3 years and serving 18 months. He refused all of those settlement offers, and he went to trial against the United States of America. In a bizarre narrative, Jeff was convicted, sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. His case was reversed twice by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. 2 separate U.S. District Court judges were removed, and his successful federal suit liberated him from the higher security violent prison in May. In May 2020, after nearly 7 years, Jeff was released to home confinement to begin his journey of rebuilding, restoring, turning disadvantages into advantages. And his book, we were just talking about this is his second book. Just released last month, and it's called When Not If, and I'm just starting to get into it. I'm just a big fan of Jeff and his way, his leadership, his charisma, his can-do-it attitude. Just, you know, one step at a time, but take a step and don't stop. And his other book is Just One More, and he's now the CEO of Jam Accelerator LLC, and it's a business consulting firm. It's a crazy story. I can't wait to unpack all this with Jeff. Before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. You know, who likes spending a couple of weekends looking and walking the car lots looking for a car? Then you spend like 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a trip to the dentist. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting – and I don't want to downplay dentists, because I've got a really good dentist, Eddie Logan, if anybody needs one. But there's a better way to take away all your pain and hassle of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They are your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. All right, folks. Jeff Martinovich, so happy you're here. How are you, man?
I'm fantastic, Brent. I got to tell you real quick, I want to talk to those sponsors of yours because the first thing I did when I got home is like, I got to get a car, and I'm so dumb, and I'm doing it online because I can't go anywhere, to look at what. So I buy a car out of Chicago. It shows up, 100 days late. Clearly, it's been through a flood. And I lost so much money, and I had no money at the time.
You needed Auto Plaza Direct.
That's what I'm saying. I should have known those guys. I've made a lot of dumb investment decisions, but that was still my dumbest yet.
I love it. And for those who are listening and watching, Jeff, when he got home, he's been on the CARES Act, put people on home confinement, but it's not all, daisies and roses. You have to wear an ankle monitor. You probably have to be in by 9:00. You have travel restrictions, but what Jeff and I were just saying, it's better than the alternative. It's better than being in prison. And your journey through all that was, I want to jump into all of it. Before we do, Jeff, you've got such a interesting history because you've got the military mixed into this, and then you get into the entrepreneurship of building a company. And one of the things I thought that was interesting about your story and building the company was that it seemed like at a time when all that financial disaster happened, they went after certain size companies, not too small, not too big, but they went after the ones that could sink their teeth in that were just right. It's like the old Three Bears deal. And take them down.
I call it purgatory, that, we were too big to not be on the radar screen, but too small to write the $300 million check that makes them move on to the next guy. Because remember, the Federal Reserve and everybody gave all the big banks trillions of dollars and then fined them to just get their check back. Yeah. And it's funny, the whole world kind of doesn't see that. But yes, we, and
timing is, that was the craziness of the timing of that time period.
It was. That was a little Occupy Wall Street time.
Yes.
You're going to get some revenge. Your 401k just got crushed.
Yep.
So
people were looking for scalps.
They were, and I was too naive to just understand that could ever happen. And when you do come from like the academy and you've got a little duty honor country, and so you're like,
I think that's a big part of your story too, Jeff, is so many people, when you get into that 97-98% of the people get indicted, it was almost like in your soul that you had to, by principle, move forward. And I want to get into that.
Either that or I'm the least intelligent American citizen. But yeah, it's everybody's different. And so I would never judge anybody else for that. Certainly 99% of people think I'm crazy for doing that. And I believe they're probably right. But, my son was 18 and going off to college.
Yeah.
And, I sat down with them, and I sat down with my own father. And, I said, if it was a different circumstance, if I had small kids, I couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't have done it. But, hopefully, I wanted to show leadership by example, and I knew it was going to be really painful. But I always thought we'd win.
Yeah.
It took 7 years longer than I thought. But I think, everybody goes through certain existential moments in their life where they make such critical decisions that can make mammoth, differences right or left. And maybe that's the whole grand design plan, that we all go through some of them.
It could be, because, it's the whole sliding door thing. If I would have chosen this way or that way, what would it have looked like? Well, talking about what things would have looked like, take us back a little bit, Jeff. Where were you as a kid and growing up, and parents and siblings and that?
Oh, the quick boring story is I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. My dad was civil service for the Air Force. My mom worked in the service department at Sears. You would call up and scream at her when she said back then it'd be 4 weeks till they come out to repair your refrigerator. And I played sports all my life, and I was very lucky to get a congressional nomination and a basketball scholarship to the Air Force Academy. And so my first question was, where is that? That's in Colorado. Where's that? But I went out there. It was an incredibly challenging experience. But I made the greatest friends that are all still part of my consulting firm right now.
I love that about your story. I love that about your story.
Lifelong trenches, 35 years. And so when I would cry about how miserable I was there, my parents would always say, it's one of those things that after you do it, you think it was a really good thing to do. And the Air Force treated me amazingly well. I worked on the stealth fighter program, and they paid for my education, of course. So I have been an incredibly lucky guy that, has really gotten a lot of benefits. And so, I think I was very fortunate. By the time I got to my Black Swan event, I had been very trained with all kinds of success and all kinds of disappointments in sports, military, academics, entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So, I believe kind of my path was to be prepared to be able to handle it.
Oh, do you think, because, you being an athlete and playing sports, both you and I played sports, how do you think, I often think that figuring out how to win, being on a team, the ups and downs of the locker room, I also think that somehow feeds into entrepreneurship too. What's your feelings
Absolutely.
about that?
Absolutely. All the way through, I never forget the day at Fort Dix, New Jersey Federal Correctional Institution. I walked into the gym to play basketball, and I was able to borrow someone's shoes, 2 sizes too small and all that. And I'm lacing up my shoes there. I am one of like 1,000 people in there, and I'm probably the only demographic of my same demographic. And I said to myself, hey, we did this before.
Yeah.
We're back at zero. We're just starting again. We proved ourselves before. We're going to do it again. And I think that is the entrepreneurial thing that just says, hey, I can start something from zero.
Yeah.
Okay?
Because you've done it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I always say to Cole, my son, the only reason we know all these business things that people like ask us, how do you know that? It's purely learning by doing.
Yes.
And, there's no rocket science to any of this, but if you do it, next time you're going to know, and you can help a whole bunch of other people do it too.
So true. And I think that, just doing it, a lot of people will keep learning and learning, but they're afraid to go out and just do it. And I think that's one of the incredible things about your story, which I think is going to be so helpful for people to read your book. For some people, it's hard for them to wrap their mind around, going from 0 to 1 billion and then going to zero. But then having it in your DNA to say, you know what, they didn't take my brain. I can recreate. I know how I built it. I know how to build. But let's go back a little bit. So you get into the military, naval world. You build in some really good friendships. How do things progress for you? Because, a lot of people just go to the military, they stay into it, they get ranked and they move on.
Right.
You had the Gulf War experience. What were you thinking at that time as in that time period in your life? Were you thinking I'm going to stay in this military world, or were you thinking I'm getting out, I'm going to go create? What was going on?
I have to go back to my father, who grew up without a father, extremely poor in the steel mills of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, who basically then taught himself everything from that point forward in real estate, stocks, things like that, and for the teeny little bit of extra money we had. So I had a lawn mowing business and a snow shoveling business, and I saved up $500, and I bought my first stock. It was Cedar Fair, which owned.
How old would you have been, Jeff, at that time?
Yeah, like 15. Because at 16, I wanted to buy a car, right, in Ohio. So by the grace of God, super pure luck, this stock like almost doubles. I cash it in. I go, this lawn mowing client of mine has this Ford Firebird, 1975 Firebird in the garage. And I'm like, hey, how much you want for that Firebird? And he said, he was an Air Force guy moving, said, I'll take $500. I said, done, I'll be right back.
Got it.
So from that moment forward, I was hooked on investing.
Yeah.
I was hooked on wealth management. And, as opposed to one other occupation is the oldest occupation in the world, making other people money, you're always going to be successful.
Yep.
You can do it 100 different ways. And so I really enjoyed that part of the business that where, I could help you in how it works, which, people think, all the negative effects. 98% of all financial people are the greatest and most ethical humans in the world. And they realize the more people you help, the more you prosper also. And
Sure.
so it was just a concept that aligned with me. Mm-hmm. And I was just, again, so lucky to get in a business that was like perfectly aligned for what I wanted to do.
How'd you get in it?
So I got my MBA at William & Mary. I was able to get out of the Air Force after about 5 years. And again, I always said, hey, if you have an F-15, you need a guy back, I'll be back anytime. And I became a rookie stockbroker and at a firm called Wheat First Securities, who eventually got bought out 10 times.
Yeah. And
I said to the manager, I said, so how do I get paid? He's like, you can make as much as you want. You just got to make it. And I said, whoa. You mean there's like no limit on the amount of money I can make?
Yeah.
And he started laughing. He said, absolutely not. And so from that moment forward, I cold called every human in the world and asked them to come in for a meeting and do a financial plan. And so I was the king of the $100 a month into a mutual fund. And everybody else was wealthy and new business people. And I was 27 years old and didn't have a dollar. But the difference there is I opened up, 10 times the accounts anyone else did. I had to because they were so small.
Yeah.
And then years later, that's what made it so huge.
Wow. And I think it's somewhat fascinating too, when you're in your 20s and, sales and somebody telling you it's commission, but if you feel that vibe, it's kind of like being in sports. You got a scoreboard. Yeah. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you play good, you're on the court. It has the kind of rhythm and feel of that sports world of, hey, if you're 27 years old and you can make the calls, you can make whatever you want. You just got to go out and do it. And if you get good at it, they don't care if you're 25, 27, 38.
No. I had some great mentors. Part of my couple of books talks about, being lucky enough to have great mentors, whether that's a grandfather or a business guy or a coach or a lieutenant in the military makes a huge difference. And so we used to say in the military, the lieutenant should listen to the generals, and learn from their mistakes so they don't have to go make the same one. So same thing in business. And so one of the reasons I like to write some of the books is to try to give out that wisdom that was given to me, because a lot of people aren't fortunate enough to run into those kinds of people. And so they don't know.
A lot of people are afraid to ask too. I think, the idea of humbling yourself and say, hey, I don't know all the answers, but he does, he's doing it. And that guy that's usually doing it usually wants to tell you about it because he's pretty proud of the fact that he's figured it out. And if he tells you what he's doing and you can put and implement that into what you do, it's like getting the answers to the test before the test.
Exactly.
So mentors are huge. Are huge. Okay, so you get in, you start creating all these accounts. When does it dawn on you, Jeff, I wonder if I could just go start my own thing?
Well, actually, the CEO and the owners of the firm came to me and said, like, hey, soon you're going to be doing your own thing here, or transferring to Merrill Lynch and maybe getting a big check.
Yep.
So why don't we help you create your own firm? And again,
I love it.
Who would ever get that break?
I love it.
That's impossible. That would never happen. And gosh, I was just like blown away. And so I did, and they helped me create it. I cleared through them still. It was a big win-win. And that's how we did it the whole time. And again, these were really smart people. And I could have never figured it out on my own. And I hired one person, and then a couple of months later, I had enough money to hire another person.
Yeah.
And soon we had 100 people.
And it became a nice big company that I can tell by just reading around the edges that it had a really good culture too. The people that you had.
That was our whole thing. We were a big Jack Welch fans.
Yes. And
we wanted to hire A players, help the B's become A's,
mm-hmm.
and help the C's go find another place that they can be happy.
Right.
Having another opportunity. Yeah. And, we did all kinds of crazy stuff to build that kind of culture. And I was also a huge believer, hire a bunch of people much smarter than myself.
Yeah.
And that really worked. And give them incredible opportunities, just like the opportunities I was given. And so, yeah, it grew really fast. It averaged 36% growth a year for almost 2 decades.
Yeah, it was recognized that way nationally. One of the fastest growing in that arena.
Very fortunate, great group of people. And man, besides the crazy nuclear meltdown of everything, that was my deepest guilt. That I always said, like, why do they have to kill the golden goose?
Yeah.
If it was me, they wanted to take, shoot the head off, fine, but don't kill the company because
it affects so many lives.
So many lives. We supported every charity on the planet. Every weekend we're running these 10Ks and building houses and Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and it just hurts so many people. What people don't see is the propagating effect of, you take away all this income, all these kids' college, all these charities, all these communities. And so that's my biggest regret. And I know it may sound silly to some, but I believe we will eventually rebuild it and restore, a very large number of stakeholders that were part of that.
Well, let's go into when the nightmare landed, because it's interesting to me. You're talking about how you were helping the community and you were wanting to be seen as the company that was leading change. And the one change that happened was you got contacted by this regulatory agency and you were thinking, well, they're contacting us because we're the good guys. They want to see us as the beta site for, showing everyone else how to be good. And you guys just start giving them this information as if we're all in this together. And then it turns.
Right. We had basically a spotless, compliance record all those years, which is very rare and probably a little lucky. So they approached us to do the SEC and FINRA to do a joint exams and audits to be more efficient. And so they called me because we were all those different things. We're like 8 different companies in one. And me, again, really dumb business mistake on my part. I'm like, absolutely. And a lot of that is narcissism and wanting to be important and wanting to say, like, oh, they came to us. Yeah. We're the best. Okay, so certainly. And I now see, like, that's like the dumbest thing you could ever do, because it was just a fishing expedition to find something or many something.
Yeah.
And it went on forever, 3 times longer than it normally does. And so it was almost like so pre-planned that I just never saw it coming. My blog last week was about one of our chapters about good CEOs need to see around corners.
Yeah.
and you just need to figure that out. And you need to be a little cynical. And unfortunately, now with all the companies we help, I'm like the grouchy granddad, cynical guy.
Think about this.
And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not what they mean. It's this, and I used to be the young, naive cheerleader.
Yeah.
So hopefully I haven't become too cynical.
No, I would say that you're definitely balanced off, because you don't lose that in your DNA. But you get called in, Jeff, and you talk about, this doesn't feel good. This sounds, they're bringing you to a meeting, and all of a sudden it's like, this sounds like things are going in opposite direction. What was going through the steps in your mind at that time?
Well, I think, as we all know, when we lied to our parents 100 years ago, if you are doing something wrong, you always, you get this pit in your stomach kind of feeling. And I either was just so naive or there wasn't nothing wrong that, I just never had that feeling. I just never thought, there's nothing here. I still believe that 1,000% today. There's nothing here. So when they bring you in and they start asking you all these questions, and they put a stack of 100 emails in front of you, and they pull out each one and they go, what do you think your investment banker was trying to say there? And I would say, well, I don't know, but there was never one thing that ever caused me any concern. So that's why I felt it just would be, not to be too dramatic, but immoral and unethical for me to say that these guys in our company did this or I did this, because I just never saw it throughout the whole event.
Okay. So Jeff, you get into and out of that meeting. What's the next thing that starts happening with you and the company?
Well, I think, as you were just speaking of, it goes into like a tornado, and just everybody and everything, and you have so many people and so many competing interests, and it really does start to be this like nightmare that you think this just really can't be happening, and I'll fix this, because us as entrepreneurs, captains of the team, we're like, oh, that's just another problem. And so that was the thing that kind of kept me trying to think I could manage all this and find the truth and the right answer, and everybody will be back to business. I remember even one time before trial, I said to the attorneys, like, I was a president of YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And, and that is a great organization. So if you need anything, what do? You pick up the phone and you call somebody. That's all part of the deal. And so I said to them, this is crazy. Who do I call? Yeah. And I remember the attorney saying, for this, there's no one to call. And that really kind of hit me there. Like, you were in the spider web, you were in the system, and it is just a unbelievably system that.
Well, it feels like the weight of the world. I mean, it's
the weight of the world. Yeah. For a year there, I had about 9,012 martinis, which I shouldn't have had, but that's just an honest answer. And you're just trying to like navigate this terribleness all day, all night. Lawsuits start showing up all hours of the night. Yeah. I became good friends with the sheriffs and all the servers because they were coming by so many times. And what happens is, I used to have this Porsche 944 that I bought when I was a lieutenant, and I couldn't afford to repair it, so I had to get rid of it. But when the timing belt goes out in one of those cars, all the pistons slam together, and it's a nightmare. And that's really how the analogy that I felt. It was one thing breaks, and then everybody's competing interests start slamming into each other, and it's a free for all. The other thing, regulators and prosecutors convince shareholders and stakeholders to work against their best interest.
Yeah.
Because they have a accomplishment. It's not to help shareholders, not to help stakeholders or
Right.
employees or anything like that.
Right.
They have accomplished their mission. So they convince all these people to do all these things that were only to their great detriment.
Right.
And it baffled me nonstop. And I felt so sorry for these people being manipulated by the system, which just kind of further reinforced that everybody loses. It's really hard to explain that to somebody if they've never kind of been through that, or they think that it's all there to take care of people.
Well, and there's a lot
rely on the government,
and there's a lot of fear. That once there gets this momentum rolling, and you've got a company, and then you've got the media, and then you've got the federal government. All those things roll into people around you get fearful because, and it should be actually they should be fearful because it really can land on them. And so there are, it's not just paranoia. People who are around in this spinning world of what's going on at that time, anybody can be sucked in. And so it really scares people to death.
Yeah. Even talk about it in the book, like even the fleet of attorneys and accountants we had that, as you know, as CEO, you're signing this, right? And you're relying on all these things, which again is another mistake that I made. I should have controlled a lot more of that. But unfortunately, they scatter like cockroaches when the kitchen light is turned on. Once the feds show up, because they know they're smarter than I was, and they know everybody could take a bullet.
Yeah.
And so they scatter, even though you might have, employed them for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
It's because they know everybody can be hurt.
So how long does this whole thing take for you? From the time that you went to that meeting to the time that you're starting to get these plea deals?
Yeah.
What's your time like in your life at that time?
Gosh, it's probably a 2 to 2 years, 2 to 3 years. It's a long process. We gave them 8,000 emails to review.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, 800,000 emails to review. They lost them all, and then we had to recreate them again. And it was a very long process. But it's about a 2 to 3 year time frame where you're living that nightmare, and unfortunately, you have all this incredible guilt and regret and remorse for all the other people damaged by this.
Yeah.
And I used to have this great fear that I would die and doing something stupid, and on my tombstone it would say, "Man, we thought he was a smart guy." and at that time, I really feel that's not an irrational fear,
right? Because
I let down so many people by not figuring out how to handle this and win and save it. And it's just, God, you have this unbelievable weight, and everybody believes you should have that weight. What
were your attorneys saying? Because you being a unique guy that didn't get scared to his core and fall into the plea bargain, they're not sure what to do with a guy like you, an animal like you, because they don't go to trial.
Right.
And so when you're saying you're going to go to trial, what are your attorneys telling you?
Right. Well, everything that we put in this latest book, 100% of it is documented on the federal record.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to put anything in there that was not true, of course, but also not even exaggerated.
Yeah.
So because, when you lose everything, all you have is the truth.
Right.
And that's like your foundation. And if you lose the truth, then you have nothing left to stand on. So I was always, the 7 years that I wrote over 500 motions and petitions with a number 2 pencil and a manual typewriter, I was always very careful to ensure there's not one iota of misrepresentation or exaggeration. because then you're toast again, right? So in the first meeting with the attorneys, the criminal attorneys,
Mm-hmm.
they said, "Hey, we just took the last week or two and went through every piece of evidence, and we can't find one piece of evidence that you did anything wrong.
Yeah.
So, we just want to let you know that." And I jumped out of my chair. I was like, "That's
Yes.
what I've been trying to tell everybody."
Finally, somebody say this.
Finally, you guys believe in me.
Yeah.
And so, we just kept on that path. And every time we'd get another plea deal offer, I would meet with all the attorneys and I'd say, "Is there anything? Have you seen anything? There's got to be something. I'm sure some crazy email." And they would always say no. And then I would turn down the plea offer. And so I was just so kind of naive, very naive, that I believed I could talk to 12 reasonable people.
Well, I don't find that unbelievable, because if you are a CEO, you're into motivating people. You're getting people to understand your point of view and what needs to be done. And this is our plan of action. This is how we're going to do it. And this is how everybody will understand how to do it.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a faraway thought that you should be able to explain.
It didn't at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we get into the trial, I want to recognize our show sponsor, White Collar Support. Nightmare Success is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group. It's the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or have made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom, Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time or 4 p.m. Pacific. For information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Start here. So, Jeff, once you realize that you're going to step into that courtroom, I know there's a lot of preparation and a lot of things that go into that. And that's a whole world that, very few people go into a federal courtroom and say, "I'm going to fight." In that time period, were you walking in thinking, if I can just have my day in court, we'll get this cleared up?
Yes, that's exactly right. That's what I thought. And until 10 seconds into the beginning.
And what happens?
Well, the judge, who was later removed from the case, was greatly censored by the appeals court for just like, there was a mission. Clearly there was the phone calls, and there was a mission to destroy the defense and control the whole operation.
Yeah.
And the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals lays that out. I actually have their language in the book. But my great miscalculation was saying, I'm going to explain hedge fund accounting
Right.
to a jury of 12 very honorable, hardworking Newport News shipyard citizens.
Right.
And they spent every day putting pictures on the big screens in the courtroom of my automobiles.
Right.
And
Money
my
you spent,
home.
lifestyle. Yeah.
They
Vacations. Yeah.
They flew in the pit boss from the Bellagio blackjack pit to tell them how much I spent on blackjack. Yeah. And then it just took off from there. So
I think it's interesting for people to know what the amount of money that we were talking about in this case shocked me, because in the world that we were talking about when things crashed, we were talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Right.
They were talking about a solar company that was overvalued by the benefit of $140,000.
That's right. And that was in that same period, we had about $8 million of fees.
Yeah.
And so for the reason I just thought it was so fantastical was that for that 0.001% or whatever that is, I created a huge conspiracy to manipulate all of the firm's management team, all of the external valuation experts who did audit, and the AICPA certified auditing firm. So for that .001, I was pretty masterful how I did that.
Very masterful. So you get through this crazy trial, and it's like the movies. Except I guess it's something more like the movie. How do you find out that the jury is having a difficult time with the deliberation and they're hung up?
Well, we were in the courtroom, and they came back and they said, there's a number of the people that just can't find any evidence to convict. And the judge again stood up and directed them. This is after about 4 or 5 weeks, of these guys being away from their lives and their families, and they were incredible people. Mm-hmm. And so Friday late night, he instructs them, you will be back here Monday to start this all over and go through it again. And, you could see it in their faces. And then Monday morning, they came back, and an hour or two later, and everybody's guilty. So everybody could go home and back to their lives. And you know what? I don't blame them. It's such a crazy process that they had to get on with their lives too.
So you find out you're guilty. They come up, they deem you guilty. And what's the time period that you had between that guilty verdict to finding out what your sentence was going to be?
Boy, that's a good question. It's such a blur.
It is a blur. It was a blur to me, and I didn't go to trial.
Yeah, maybe it's a month or two, or I don't even know if it's that
because you're
long.
Like in no man's land.
Yeah.
My no man's land was pleading guilty and then being sentenced and then having 2 months to wait to find out where I was going to go do prison. You were waiting to find out what your sentence was. You get pulled back in there. Did you have any idea that they were going to have the type sentence that they had?
Well, an honest answer is the attorney said, like, hey, if everything goes terrible, you'd be looking at like 10 years. Yeah. So, and so I to their credit, that's what they told me. So I knew that. Yes. And then when they started the sentencing and the judge went on a soliloquy for, a half hour about automobiles and houses and lifestyle, which, had nothing to do with a solar company valuation stock. Mm-hmm. It's clearly a constructed process. It is an objective to strike fear into the mass public, and they accomplish it very well. Mm-hmm. And one of the things which you've done such an incredible job with, and I'd love to follow in your footsteps, is, there's 100 things about that process that are just morally, ethically, logically wrong. And I'm going to do everything I can for the rest of my life to help make it better for other people. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a great supporter of keeping crime off the streets and all the violence and all those things. Okay, but I'm also a great supporter of what they teach you at the Air Force Academy is ethics and fair. And so it's just the whole process is designed to accomplish an objective. And again, not to get on too much of a rant today, but the process from front to end is just dumb. Mm-hmm. It accomplishes the exact opposite objective of what it says it's trying to accomplish. So there's only two answers to that. There's incompetence, or that's not really the mission. Mm-hmm. It can't be anything but that. But if we want to make the world safer, we want to make the markets better, we want to help, people rehabilitate, whatever that would be, you would do the system 180 degrees from what it is set up to do.
Sure.
You know that 100 times better than I do.
Well, we both lived it. And I can't imagine, though, on your journey, going through the trial, going back to sentencing, um, the judge comes out with the sentence, and what's what's going through your mind at that moment?
Well, I'm still in the mode as I still am today. No problem. We're going to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do an appeal, and I'm going to figure out how to do that appeal. And I guarantee this will be reversed.
Yeah.
And so I never had the breakdown moment.
Yeah.
Actually, I one day talked to like a counselor in Norfolk, Virginia. I only went one time, but all my friends were like, "Man, you got to go. This is crazy." And I said to him, I said, "Hey, is it just some moment I'm going to like be walking down the street and I'm just going to like fall on the ground and have a heart
nervous
attack?
Breakdown? Yeah.
Nervous breakdown." And he said, "No." He was like, "No, I don't think you're ever going to do that." And I really never did have that moment because it was all fight or flight.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't let myself accept the truth that I was screwed and this was all crumbled and they killed the golden goose.
Yeah.
And we lost $1 billion.
Yeah.
And all these people lost their jobs and the shareholders lost their investments and the stakeholders and the funds. And I just couldn't let myself ever believe that I'm not going to fix that. And I have to admit, that's the way I still look at the world today, that I am eventually going to fix this. And I think that's the only thing that has kept me going.
It's such a great mindset, Jeff, because, you know, there's so many wonderful statements in that movie, Shawshank Redemption, but one of them, you know, get busy living or get busy dying.
Right.
In prison, you find that there is literally only two paths on that. There's the people who've given up and they've kind of, you know, you can see it in their eyes and you can see that people are just trying to make it work and trying to see how to better themselves so that when they get to the next step that they're better. And, and that's what you did. I'm curious, when you found out that you were going to a different type of prison, what was that like? I can't, you know, I went to Leavenworth, which everybody knows the name of Leavenworth, but I was at a prison camp. You didn't get that opportunity.
Right. Well, when you talk about kind of the survival type stuff is, I kind of figured out I'm going to try to get stronger every day in 3 areas: physically, intellectually, and emotionally. And if I can do that, maybe I'll be strong enough to get through this. And, you know, physically, not just for self-defense, but for serotonin and dopamine and all those things help you do things.
Yeah.
Intellectually, I read 26 of the classics. And, you know, when you come from the schools of engineering, you know, I don't even know what a classic is. So I told myself, hey, this will be the only time in my life that I'll have this opportunity to better myself in those things. And then emotionally, I did a lot of Siddha yoga and some different things that really helped take the edge off the anger so that I could see through to positive activities and not just be so angry.
Those are great strategies you just laid out there for everybody.
Really helped, you know, one foot in front of the other every day.
So you were in this place that is an arena that you would have never thought you were going to be in. I'm sure that, you know, everything's about, you know, how do you do your time? You were locked in on really understanding how you could unravel yourself from this legal mess, and you really became your own attorney, didn't you?
Right. Well, you know, it helps when they take your $1 billion, so you don't have any more money for the attorney.
Then you figure it out.
Yeah, you're just forced me. But, you know, I got really lucky, and I knew, of course, I was going to have to try to figure this out, but I just started helping other guys.
Yeah.
And we calculated at one time that I filed over 300 motions for 300 other guys.
That's incredible.
And And unfortunately, at the beginning, those guys probably got a lousy deal on their jailhouse lawyer. But I got a little better. And of course, you never win anything, but you start figuring it out.
Yeah.
And then we got a couple breaks, and we helped some guys, and they got a little bit of time off, and we've got a little momentum going. And then by helping them, I was really helping myself.
Sure.
And such a great fundamental there. And then I started sending my own in, and I was able to reverse the first sentence. And the appeals court helped me a lot with that because it was just so insane, the process of the trial. So that kind of started
that had to be an unbelievable feeling. How far along were you in your journey in prison when that happened?
Yeah, not too far, maybe like 4 or 5, 6 months, something like that. Yeah. And then, and because the prosecutors knew how just ridiculous my trial was, they had secretly prepared a second indictment.
Of course.
So when they took me back to Norfolk, the magistrate judge said, "Well, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Martinovich is a free man." And I jumped out of my chair, started to walk out, and they're like, "Oh, please,
we've got another
thing. Yeah. We got something else." So it was just another one that, again, I thought was more fantastical than the first. And so they did another crazy sentencing there.
What a gut punch, though.
Where the judge said,
what a gut punch. I mean, to get that far. Yeah. And then they come right back around and say, "Oh, well, we've got one more for you here."
Yeah. And then, so what they did is they resentenced me and gave me 2 more years.
Okay.
And said, "Thank you for playing."
Yeah. See if you want to do that again.
In other words, if you come stand at a January 6th type of rally,
mm-hmm.
if you were there, we're going to hold you in a Washington, D.C. jail for 2 years without ever trying you.
Right.
Just so nobody else thinks about doing that.
Yep.
And so when I went back to the law library with more time,
yeah,
everybody said, "Yeah, man, I told you, okay, don't do that, okay? You can't defend yourself. They're just going to give you more time." And so it works, totally works.
Yeah. So you end up, eventually, you get two reversals in the appeals court. You get moved around a lot, right?
I did they kept me up at the higher security prison because I kept appealing and fighting it. And I was very lucky. I sent a gazillion FOIA requests in.
Yeah.
One FOIA request comes back showing the communication between the prosecutor's office and the Bureau of Prisons, telling them to keep me there, even though I was supposed to be at a camp also. And so I filed I went to the law library and figured out how to file a different kind of suit, filed it in New Jersey court that day, and then 6 days later, I was moved to a camp. So I was very fortunate to get down to the camp, which then allowed me to be part of the CARES Act, as you stated. Yeah. So I would have never been able to take advantage of all that
if you weren't in the right place.
If I didn't do
didn't do all the things you had to do to get there.
Yeah, and I think that's a great lesson that I've tried to pay attention to is, you just got to keep doing 100 things because you never know what's going to work.
Yeah, just don't give up.
Don't give up. And when I won some of these appeals, that it was always the arguments or the grounds that I thought would never win.
Yeah.
And the ones that I thought would really win, zero success.
Isn't that interesting?
So I think you got to keep doing like 100 things in parallel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be the things you never imagined that connect the dots that get you where the universe wants you to eventually get to.
It's interesting.
So yeah, true, though. Yeah.
So Jeff, the craziness of the pandemic happens. I can't even imagine being in prison in the pandemic because it gave the prison world such an easy way just to lock everybody down, take away whatever we consider privileges like visits and telephones and yard time and all those things. Those are all shut down. When do you find out that you might have a possibility of getting out?
Well, with the First Step Act, and they made a list. I don't know if you remember this, but they made a list. They told us we were going home. We all called our families and everybody, and everybody went crazy. And a week later, they came back and said, "Oh no, that wasn't the right list. You're not going home." And so it was, that was kind of terrible. So I kept not being on the list. And then eventually, when they tried to do a better job of getting people to go there, there's a crazy story of Ashley had a friend of ours, Joy Talley, who's a really famous psychic in Virginia Beach, Virginia, had said to Ashley, "Hey, Jeff's going to go home next Friday, and he's going to be the second name called on the list. I swear this is a true story." And she told me that on the phone. And then that next Friday, I was on the phone with her, and I said, "Hold on 1 second." And my name was called the second one on the list, and that I was going home.
Wow.
So it was a really
that
crazy
is
situation.
wild. And I don't want to skip over the deal with Ashley either, because you, not to jump too far ahead, but when did she come into your life?
Of course, when the nuclear meltdown was happening, the marriage, dissolved. It's totally my fault. So later, Ashley had actually worked at our mortgage company we had, and we were good friends, and she was a good A player. Well, I was in Fort Dix prison for about a year, and then all of a sudden I get this love letter one day, and it said, "Hey, I've never told you this, and I know you won't believe this, but I love you, and I'm going to stick with you, and I'm going to help you through this."
This is a great story for Valentine's Day, Jeff. We're recording this on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." And she, to her credit, now, of course, she thought, of course, his appeal's going to be overturned. He'll be home soon.
Of course.
To her credit, she drove 7 hours to come visit me once a month in that hell of visitors in a high security prison every single month for 7 years, until she picked me up on that final day and took me home.
I'm glad we did not leave that out, because those type of things are the things that keep the glue of sanity together, and it almost helps you keep a straddling a fence to the outside world, to know that somebody's out there that cares, somebody's out there that is helping you plug into the outside world. You and I talked about this, Jeff, when we were off the interview, but my wife was the same. I always say she should have worn a cape. I mean, as a superhero. And she came every weekend. It was a 4.5 hour drive one way. And I often think, we always talk about this on the show, that when someone goes to prison, the family goes to prison. And my 3 daughters saw how Julie was handling a unbelievable nightmare and how strong she was. And I think all those things, when something happens like what we've gone through, Jeff, there's so many things that pop up that you are thankful for, are grateful for.
Yeah.
And that Ashley story that you just told was so incredible. She just comes right out. You get a love letter, and she connects with you from there on out. I mean,
as I tell all my friends, some things in the universe just cannot be explained.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's you finally find out from the psychic that you're getting out.
Yeah. I swear that's true.
It's so funny. But I would believe it too. But what's in your mind? What are you thinking? Okay, I'm getting out. I've been in for a while. So not just hasn't been a bad week summer camp. You've been in for 7 years.
7 years.
What's the Jeff thinking now? You know, the builder, the visionary, the guy that's always on the move, that's always positive, the glass half full. What are you thinking about this getting close to the door to get out?
Yeah, I'm thinking about, I have to do an unbelievably good job of being a great person for Ashley,
Yep.
My son Cole, and my mother, and so you have such guilt that I left them for all that time.
Yeah.
Especially when you're the leader, and you're the provider. So there's so much. Yeah, there's so much to make up for there, and then also, of course, okay, I have zero money. I don't even have a driver's license. I don't have a bank account, of course. But that was a nightmare trying to get those things.
Oh, yeah.
And so I really started to understand how difficult it is for inmates to, reintegrate.
Reentry is a whole nother nightmare that you have to step through.
And I had all these tools, available to me and people available to me, and most guys don't.
Yeah.
It's pretty much impossible for them. So the day I was home, the next day, Brian Redines, who was my roommate at the Air Force Academy and has been extremely successful in business after 20 years in the Air Force, hops in his jet and flies out to Norfolk from San Diego and says, "Oh my God, man, I've got all these problems in these businesses and I need you to merge these 4 companies together." And I mean, it's just incredible luck on my part.
That had to make you feel so.
I have these guys. Yeah. And, they, because they were high up in business, so they understood the reality of how these things happen.
Yeah.
And people came out of the woodwork, like I just can't even begin to describe, gave me opportunities. I would get up at 4 a.m. every day and I'd work for 4 hours before I go to my halfway house job, and I was just doing all these things for free for people that eventually came back to me with a lot more opportunities now. So it was just kind of a whirlwind. I was a little bit of a basket case. Ashley will tell you.
Yeah.
An honest answer is pretty much every night, still today, she wakes up to me screaming. So I still have to do much better with all that.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a tremendous amount of fear and anger. So even though on the outside I do a pretty good job during the day, you can't fake it at night while you're sleeping.
That's right.
But we're going to figure that out.
Well, and I think it's a real testament to you that the guys that you were with when you guys were young and going through this stuff with the Naval Academy and in the military, they wanted you. They believe in you and wanted help. That's the thing. Going through everything that you've gone through, Jeff, you're that much better to help. You're that much better of a CEO. You're that much better of understanding and having a different perception of things because of what you've been through. And I think that's this extra seasoning you have now is you didn't lose the people that really truly believed in you, and they still want that Jeff that knows how to make things work. But you also are a person now that have gone through all this. So you're the same Jeff, but different from the fact that you've experienced some things that you would never have thought you would have experienced.
I think as maybe you've had these same moments where back when we were, so successful and making so much money, I wonder, would I have taken the time out of my selfish day, to help these other guys as much as they've helped me?
Yeah.
I hope I would, but you never know until you're put in these situations.
Well, and I think the other thing that doesn't go away, you're what, 3 years? Is it 3 years out? 4 years out? 4 years out?
Almost 4.
Yeah. I find myself, because I've got grandsons now that are twins that are about 18, 19 months old. There's
impossible.
there's family moments that I still have. I've been out 7 years, and because of what you and I have experienced, I still get that feeling sometimes just silently to myself when the family is around and things are good. I'm just so glad I'm here. I'm just feel really grateful that I'm here. I'm here because I wasn't. Moments. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And the one of the unbelievable miracles is now I have the great opportunity every day to work with my son Cole,
which is awesome.
And he's 29, and we do 100 different things together. And, I mean, that's the greatest gift I could ever have. And Ashley and I now have little 2-year-old Carly, which is a miracle. And so that's a way that I'm just we got to force ourselves to be strong for another 20 years.
You got to be.
But it's a true story. It's a true story that after we selected the name and like a month later or something, Ashley looked up what does Carly mean, and she started to cry because it means free man.
Oh my gosh.
Which is unbelievable.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't
my
know
little daughter's named Carly.
So, is that right?
Yeah, so that's amazing.
That is amazing. Wow. Let her know that.
Wow, I will. So, Jeff, what are you doing now?
Well, I've been really fortunate. This corporate law firm here in downtown Norfolk has partnered with us, and I have my 4 or 5 Air Force Academy guys. And basically, what we try to do is help companies. And certainly, so I always say, like, look, who would be better to help you? Because no human has made more mistakes than I have. And so we really just enjoy small companies, CEOs, CFOs, and helping them grow.
I love it.
Helping them do things that, maybe see around corners.
Yeah.
And so we're doing tons of stuff like that, and that comes with 100 other.
But it's such a great thing, Jeff, because you are, you're speaking, you're writing books, you're helping companies see around the corners, and from your experience, you can help people. You have a unique ability to have been a big CEO of a big company, losing and building back. And so some of the things that you're talking to them about are things that you are going through as you're building yourself back into this world. And that even makes it more authentic.
Yeah. I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't been able to travel to a conference, but we've done a couple 4-day immersions. I make all the family and friends come over to the house and don't let them leave till it's all over. But I think why he is so terrific is everything he teaches you is through a real story.
Yeah.
Whether it's him or, a client. And so what I'm trying to do in the book, and then I'd love to travel the country and help all these corporations and organizations.
You will.
And I try to teach every lesson with real story.
Yep.
and I guess if you've gone through a whole bunch of crazy stuff, there's plenty of material to be able to teach us. And I think, for the last 4,000 years, man has sat around the fire and told stories. And so I think that's how people learn best.
Absolutely.
I think it's
they say when you tell a story, people turn on a movie in their brain. And I think that's why stories work so well. And they can analogize it and fit themselves into the story. Well, I always ask people this, Jeff, at the end of the interview is after everything that you've gone through, and you've been through one heck of a journey, and you survived, and now you're thriving back out into the new world that you are in. What do you think is your greatest takeaway for the listeners out there?
It's probably pretty cliche to say, don't ever give up, and resilience and perseverance, because there's so many strong humans out there that have done that. So
hard.
I'm just happy that, I was maybe as strong as them. But I think it all comes down to, of course, you got to be positive or otherwise you give up. But it's got to come down to you got to get through these things by thinking through a plan. Not that it's always going to work, and you might have to change it 100 times, but you need a strategy, you need tactics, and you need to work on the holistic thing. You do need physical, intellectual, emotional, and you got to think, what am I going to do today that's going to be the most productivity for when I pass out in my bed or my bunk at the end of the night? Did I make forward progress? And you can't wait a day. And then again, because it's going to be the things you don't think that make the huge difference. And you'll never see it. We're not smart enough, or we're not granted the power enough to figure that out. So you got to do so much stuff that you look like a Tasmanian devil next to all the people around you.
Yep.
And that's the only way, you're going to get out the other end of the tunnel.
Yep.
So I don't know if I explained that too clearly.
No. What's great about it is you've lived it. And that's your story, and your resilience and your determination and your positive attitude and mindset is actually how you survived. And that's a testament to how you're wired, Jeff. And I think only great things are going to continue to happen for you, because you're not going to be thrown down in a ditch. But if you are, you're going to get out.
Well, we have a lot of people that still help, and a lot of things to restore. And, I'd love 10 years from now for it to be a good 60-minute story that we really did make it back for everybody and all the causes. So that's our goal. Got to have a goal.
I love it. For those out there that are looking for that book, go to Amazon, and it is, I think it came out January, what was it, 14th or 16th? And I think
so.
Let's see what the,
it's when not if.
When Not If, and just one more is the other book. I was looking for both books there.
Right.
Yeah. When Not If, and just one more. And if you're looking for help in the business world, Jam Accelerator LLC, check that out. And Jeff, man, I am so impressed with your story. And hey, if anybody's looking for my book, go to Amazon. And
it's an awesome book, Brent. And Brent, thank you so much for what you're doing for everybody. I mean, it's, I just learned about it a little bit ago, and what a huge impact that has.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And so please keep it going. And all of us, let us know how we can help you on that mission. It's an incredible mission.
I appreciate that, Jeff. And anybody, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe. That all is helping. If you got time, a review on Apple somehow puts the show on steroids. I appreciate that. Go to BrentCassidy.com. That's with a TY, a DY. We spell it wrong. And I want to just give a shout out to Homestead Financial for giving me this great podcast here. And if anybody's got home mortgage needs, get to Greg Afdiev. As I used to say when I was writing my emails back and forth from prison, stay strong. I'll do the same. Jeff, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Brent, thank you so much.
Nightmare success, in and out.